Tennessee, David Tulis.
A Southern Literary Conference is taking place today, even as we chat here in the mainstream media about important local issues. It's taking place in the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. I have a place and time here by Wendell Berry, 20 stories from the Port William membership. And there's a paragraph I marked says this: the pen's story then was the story of the gathering up of a small, brief coherence within a larger, longer story of disconnection and incoherence. Even as Elton and Mary were making themselves whole in their marriage and in their place, Port William, that's his locus, and its neighborhood were coming increasingly into the story of cheap fuel, speed, and the fire-driven machinery of disintegration. By the time of Elton's death in 1974, the balance had tilted against such a life as he had aspired to and lived. The economy of industry had prevailed. The land and the people who did the land's work were to be used and used up by the measures of mechanical efficiency and corporate profit. Greed was replacing thrift as an economic virtue. All was to be taken, nothing given back. In his last years, Elton saw that this was happening, and he raged against it. It was, again, a reduction to nothing, this time not just for him, but for him and his kind. When he died, the world as he had known it, and for a while had helped to make it, was ending. And then skipping a couple of sentences, looking the other way, he saw farmers never out of debt, resorting to town jobs, working at night and on Sunday to stay even, and always fewer of them as they died or gave up or failed to meet their payments and were sold out. After they were gone, there were always fewer to remember them. It is hard to remember one world while living in another, and that's from a story called A Place and Time by Wendell Berry. He is here in town, a great writer and author of a noted essay called Local Economy. It is Cash Friday today. And my name is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me just a couple minutes of your time. I'm urging you to love your neighbor and buy local. The chief Nooga centrist in Chattanooga, that's me, the guru of local economy, holding up 5 $100 Federal Reserve notes. Yeah, they're not dollars. Just look. It says Federal Reserve note in very scrunched, all capital type there above the head of Andrew Jackson. There he is, and I'm holding a $5 $20 bill. What I do on Cash Friday, and what you, my listeners, should do, is be virile, be hairy, be strong, and accomplish your spending in real money that accomplishes and satisfies the transaction. Unlike credit, where there is an interruption of the completion of the transaction to a later date, where there's a payment received and a record kept, and a kind of flagellum of data that travels after the transaction. And so I suggest that you be virile and manly and pay in cash. It satisfies the local shop at which you patronize. For example, Don's Meats. You know, if you go to Don's Meats, which is a great butcher, by the way, here in Hickson, and you pay in credit, guess what? Don, whose calling was as a free market professor, that's what his calling was, but he said, I'll go into the meat business. It's better. There's more life in meat than there is in the sterile hallways of liberal academia. Don doesn't have to pay the tapeworm tax, which is anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5%, which is the credit card fee to maintain our efficient economy. So satisfy the transaction, buy a great sausage from Don's Meats, and pay in green rectangle. There, you're doing a good thing. It is a kind of local economy virtue, a kind of poetic virtue. And I have a caller here. This is David Tulis, and caller, you're live on the air. What's on your mind? You're on the air with David Tulis. What may I do to help you? Well, someone's cell phone had a hiccup right then and did not come through. David Tulis here. We argue for local economy and the free market. Now, there's a great review, by the way, looking back at ancient history back in 2015 by a writer named Charles Goyette, LouRockwell.com, A Day in the Life of the Empire. And what's really funny about this is we're seeing the disintegration of Venezuela under progressive thinking, we have a picture. We have a picture of the American way of doing things. And the Americans, they are an imperial, adventurous bunch, and there are so many threats worldwide that we have military occupation. We have military occupation and assistance to establish dictatorships around the world. In almost every country in Africa, I think, save one. There may be one country in which we don't have an operation. And back in 2015, as Charles is recounting, we had a declaration of emergency. It was March the 9th, 2015, under President Obama, a new national emergency. And I want you just to get a sense of perspective about Washington and how we are in fact being saved by Washington. And it doesn't matter who the head is. It could be Obama, who's going to be there to save us, or it could be Donald Trump, who's going to be there to save us. But the problem is Venezuela. Venezuela is a part of a national emergency in this country. And even though we have a Defense Department, which is as Charles says, the world's largest employer, and it's bigger than the next 12 countries combined, and yet with all that military activity around the world, this threat reached the proportions of a national emergency on the 9th of March, and President Obama could not ignore it. And here's the statement. President Obama today issued a new executive order declaring a national emergency with respect to the unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States posed by the situation in Venezuela. It's unusual and extraordinary. The GDP of that country is less than that of New Jersey and a 30th of that of the United States. The military budget is 160 times larger than the gross domestic product of this country, which has no aircraft carriers, no naval destroyers, 2 submarines. It has 33 jet fighters. The U.S. has about 2,300. Venezuela had only 10 attack helicopters. The U.S. has 957. Now, watch out for the armor force. The armor fleet is 192 tanks. The Americans, of course, have well toward 10,000. He says 9,000. And in a way, you're kind of starting to laugh here at this emergency. But what happened was that we froze the accounts of half a dozen individuals, economic sanctions, freezing the assets of seven people. If a bankrupt and crumbling Venezuela represents an unusual and extraordinary threat to U.S. national security, as he asserts, the American people should demand a refund of the $1 trillion a year that they have been spending on the national security state. In fact, Obama knew that Venezuela posed no such threat to American security. Indeed, it is the empire that poses a threat to Venezuelan security. The U.S. having supported a military coup there in 2002. Now, I think about that. We've had coups in 30, 40 countries since World War II, and we're concerned about the Russians buying advertising on an intergalactic global platform called Facebook. We're somehow shocked and indignant that happens. Well, that's what conservatives are shocked about that, and so are liberals. It is a revealing episode. Clearly, no national emergency or extraordinary threat from Venezuela exists, but whenever the impulse to meddle arises, whatever the diplomatic issue involved, as its first response, the empire declares danger to the American people and invokes the national security state. And it's a playbook that even President Trump follows, one that presidents are supposed to follow, as Obama put it. It's a playbook that comes out of the foreign policy establishment, says Obama, and the playbook describes responses or prescribes responses to different events. And these responses tend to be militarized responses. This is David Tulis calling. You're live on the air with me. What's on your mind?
I'm actually trying to get in touch with Russell Stroud.
Okay. Well, this is David Tulis, and we have business coming in on our line. Now, I want to mention also the gig economy. I've got a couple of things to mention. Regarding the reform I've been thinking about this week here at Nooganomics.com and here at Nooga Radio, and it's in the direction of judicial reform and stanching the flow of defendants into the maw of our purported judicial system. But before I get there, just want to mention that we are the gig city, and I have not done a follow up because I've been really involved in sales here at a radio station in the afternoon. I'm not able to do all the journalism that is beckoning me out into a different venue. But one would be the enforcement by Donna Williams of the Mayor's Economic Development Office of the Airbnb ban, our Great Wall of China raised around the gig city to prevent Airbnb from prospering in certain parts of town. But there's a great little essay by a young woman named Hannah Cox. She works at the Beacon Center in Nashville, a libertarian think tank and legal outfit that's looking to find litigation to overturn certain aspects of commercial government. It's an essay about the gig city, and not the gig city directly, but the idea of the gig city and the distributed economy. And the comments she's making refers to the idea of public transportation. In Nashville, Mayor Megan Barry is proposing a $5 billion taxpayer-funded collusion with contractors and others to have underground rail and other rail systems in the city. And so Hannah is attacking at beacon10.org. She's attacking the idea of public transportation, citing a 2014 report by the American Public Transportation Association. 74% of people support public transportation, but only 5% of commuters actually use it. Okay, so we have people who support it for other people. They endorsed it as an idea, right, a benefit for the poor and the like. An analysis of 21 cities that approved tax increases for public transportation found that though these ballots passed with an average of 63% of the vote, a decade later, the share of commuters driving alone fell by only 2%. So you have a lot of people supporting it as in theory and in polls, but why would you want to have delays and waits and overcrowding, cleanliness, safety issues, and convenience or inconvenience? Have all these things come to yourself as a user of public transportation. Why a centralized system when the trend, the mega trend in the economy and in tech is decentralization? And she brings up the idea of gig city by discussing ride sharing in the gig economy, right? Also bringing up other advantages, the prospect of working remotely, the fact that we all have smartphones, we all can be contributors to Nooga Radio, because we are the station where you report and the world decides. We would like that slogan to be brought to life by practice, and for that to happen, you have to let us know, right? You just call us. You call me, or contact me through Nooganomics.com. I'm prompt to answer anything that's urgent, okay? When Hanson Melvin, whom I had met before, dealing with him as a walking wall black victim, when he called me and said, "Here's what's happened to me," I dropped everything, and I was helping him figure out the facts of his case at the very beginning, and that was by affidavit. I helped him write an affidavit. Just say what happened, and then we said, okay, is this what happened? Is this what happened? So he wrote an affidavit, and by my prompt, I prompted him to write this affidavit, and that was the basis of his claim. He had it all down. In fact, even though he had an affidavit from a couple months after, or a month or two after his abuse, he forgot important points. So it's important to note that you forget things if you don't write an affidavit. So he had an affidavit and brought it to my attention. If you have something, my listener, of importance to me, let me know. The remote smartphone economy, take advantage of it. Let us know what's coming. Show us your video. Have a video of encounters with especially public servants and representatives of the people employed by city or county. The idea of gathering in a central location, standing in line to purchase tickets, and boarding a bus or train according to a schedule set by someone other than themselves, Hannah says, is dated. With the rate that technology is advancing, it's hard to picture anyone doing it much further into the future. Uber has already introduced, she says, new models that are disrupting public transit in other cities. Their Uber Pool option allows, this is really interesting, allows commuters to ride share with others going in the same direction and splitting the fare, essentially building a more efficient bus line based on real-time supply and demand needs. Additionally, Uber recently partnered with a suburb of Tampa to run 2 bus lines for $40,000 a quarter of $40,000, a quarter of what the city was spending on those services previously. An arrangement, she says, that several other cities are considering copying. And not to be forgotten is the promise of the autonomous car, which Uber is testing in other cities. Now, it is Cash Friday, by the way, and you and I, my listener, we go to our lender, our credit union, or bank, and we draw out $100, and we do that partly just in jest, and it's kind of a joke. You know, what if you, my listener, and I go to the bank and draw out $200? Is that what? Who cares? Well, there's so little cash in the system. The system is so leveraged. There's virtually no cash in it. So if you and I both get $100 out, there might be some alarm among the good people who run the credit-based tapeworm economy. Here, it's instruments coursing through the veins of commerce in Hamilton County and Chattanooga. Go out $100 in cash and spend it on a local economy provider. Right? Love your neighbor and buy local. We have cash. We spend that at Don's Meats. We spend that at the locally owned restaurant. And we do that to avoid the tapeworm tax, and also, which of course the provider pays, right? The shop pays that tax, and we avoid that if we pay in cash. And so cash is private, and you should always have a few $100s on your person. I suggest that you be manly and have some cash on your person. When I meet a man who doesn't have $5 on his person, he may be poor. Okay, then I say, well, he's poor. But a man of means, a common, ordinary working person, a business person who doesn't have $5 on him, but only a credit card and a debit card, I view that person as somehow not quite up to snuff. That's not really, it's just not very masculine somehow. Now, women are probably more sensible than men, and they should have some cash on them, always a few $100 at least. I mean, it's just what's the $100? You go out to eat for 4 at a steakhouse, you spent $50. So if you have $100 in cash, that's 2 meals. Okay, that's 2 meals eating out. So why is it a big deal? It's not a big deal to have $400 or $500. It's not a big deal because of inflation. Because these green rectangles are declining in value every day. Not as much as the central bank wants. Right? We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about why we should be thankful that the value of this money is declining. You should be thankful for it. We are coming into the Thanksgiving season, and I'm going to talk with Paul Hine about why we should be grateful, thankful that the money is declining in value, and we should be concerned that it's not declining as fast in value as the Fed wants. Grandma Yellen, of course, it's being proposed that she be replaced by Jerome Ray Powell, a great friend of paper, a great friend of paper. Now, about reform, the big God or small God or concept that I'm thinking about says this: that God is great, God is good, the God of the Bible. But there are many people who have made a small God out of him, a God who cares only about the individual, whose argument in the Bible is only to the individual, and not to society as a whole, not to courts, right? Not to judges, not to presidents, not to generals, not to economic advisors, not to bankers, right? Not to university professors or administrators of colleges or hospitals. God has nothing to say to them at all. Really, we shouldn't commit adultery. We probably shouldn't steal. We probably shouldn't smoke, and we probably shouldn't see movies. Some of these people say, but those are arguments for piety, and piety is good. We need to have piety. We need to have sermons on piety. Obeying the commandments personally, right? But is there not more than that? And because Christianity has become almost totally privatized and sort of future otherworldly centered, it is in many ways, and its people are in many ways not bearing fruit now in the larger picture. And that picture, I would say, is in the maladministration of justice all across the country, but especially here in Chattanooga. I say especially because we're here, right? It's especially important that we care about justice here and now in Chattanooga. And if we have judges such as Barry Steelman in criminal court and Tom Greenholz and Judge Don Poole, who was gracious enough to give me an interview this week, if we have judges here, do we not want their government to be informed by God? And also to be informed by, I would say, a godly statute in the Tennessee Code annotated 3911-304, and that is a description of the requirement for culpable mental state. Now, you say, what's the big deal? Culpable mental state, a guilty mind. Okay, that's called the guilty mind. I'd like to suggest that if people who call themselves Christians, okay, that's not you, but you know people who are Christians, right? You, my listener, you have some sympathy to Christianity, but are not practicing. I understand that you don't really care details. And you let church people care about those things, about the Spirit and God and all that, and Jesus. But if you could ask them this question, you might help bring about some improvements in our county. Ask them this question: does your God care about the courts? Yes or no? All right. If God cares about the courts, then does He care about an important requirement? And that would be that no person can be accused of a crime unless the accusation includes the argument and the assertion that the person intended to commit that crime. That's called mens rea, or guilty mind. That's called guilty intent, or culpable intent. Culpable intent has to be proven. Now, I'm saying this because the judges and the lawyers and the prosecutors and the public defender's office operate entirely apart from this law. It's a law. It's a law. It's in the Tennessee Code, and it's in also Deuteronomy 5. The whole head separating from the axe handle discussion by Moses, in which he says that there has to be, in a death, there has to be intent. And our system of law reflects the biblical standard. If there's a crime, it has to be alleged, and it has to be proven that there's intent. And your defense lawyer, if you're not defending yourself, if you're not smart enough to defend yourself, then engage someone as your agent and to represent you, right? He's presenting you, but he's redoing it as himself. He's representing you. If he doesn't know about the defense of mens rea, the guilty mind defense, then he's not worth anything, okay? And the bar in Chattanooga and Hamilton County largely ignores this, especially on small crimes. If Hillary Clinton can avoid prosecution because the prosecutor couldn't find mens rea, couldn't find guilty mind. If Lois Lerner, the crook who ran the special division at the IRS, if she can't be prosecuted because there's no evidence of guilty mind, then how can the poorest of the poor, the down and out people whose faces we can see on the arrest reports, right? The jail bookings reports at the Time Free Press, the jail bookings reports at report@chattanooga.com, or Just Busted, those kinds of publications. If we can't argue mens rea there, failure to appear, for example, in the case of Kenneth Lambert Baker, if the prosecutor's not going to assert that he intended to not appear, or he was criminally negligent in not appearing, if he's not going to argue that, then the case should not even be brought up. The court can say this: don't bring me a case unless there's mens rea. Don't bring it to me. And if you bring me cases where you're not going to prove mens rea, then I'm going to find you in contempt. That's the final set of threats these judges can make. Don't bring me cases unless there is a guilty mind. In other words, they're demanding a godly requirement. They're reminding everybody that there's a godly requirement in criminal cases of guilty mind. And so Christians should be behind that. Also, anybody who is concerned about justice, anybody such as Chattanooga Organized for Action that are concerned about the poor being round up, they should care about this rule. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and